title of today's episode is called A Samurai's Last Glance. And so the imagery of the samurai has always been profound for Mr. Within, because it seemed that the samurai in his honor was acknowledging a level of reality beyond himself. That if he was to enter or exit this reality, it would be done with the grace of the awareness of the whole. And so sacrifice means many things to many originations of what that could mean. But the samurai has a profundity which is, it's calming when you see it. I am in no way a samurai, but I had a dream once where it was as if I was projected into a reality, just like how I'm talking right now, and I have, for example, this environment I'm walking in. Similarly, there was an actual real projection in my dream state where I was having the experience of a samurai, but it was only from the arms view. So I was just seeing the arms, and my motions were moving, and there was an elegance. It's as if our vision is like, one aspect of it is a bird that has nested on a tree. Another aspect is simultaneously this bird is constantly going from reality to reality, tree to tree, constantly. So an aspect of ourselves right now as we exist is given an existential allowance that is something which our consideration of what man is now is not perhaps given. We're saying man is individual, man is not the whole universe, but is a part of the universe, it seems. And so the question must be, what is man's vision? And so let us go back to the experience of the samurai who, after elegantly handling his environment with motions of great knowing, as if the samurai was not just fighting with his weapon, but with the intention of the effect and the result of his movement, as if every motion is the direct cut of what he was trying to achieve. Do you see that level of focus in how reality is manifesting? As the intensity of our experience increases, the awareness of the being is shifting from ideology and the constant view of it, as if you've been just staring at the corner of the room and suddenly you're turning on and you're like, oh my God, there's all this space here. What that means is, right now, many people have an idea of we're all in space, but it's not experiential. It's just the most reasonable thing we can talk about right now. So what we talk about, it might not be the peak of what man can confront or is confronting. Sometimes I find many of beings who have thought they were my enemies or just certain oppositions or forces working against me, I looked at my interpretation and I noticed at the end of it there was part of me in there. As if the enemy was the puppet you were keeping in front of your face, because reality was not being acknowledged on a more existentially aware level. As if self-awareness was the touch of the untouched. You're realizing how you're here beyond the interpretation of space and time. So think of it in this way, that many people who look at life in a very, in quotation, spiritual manner, let us not call it spiritual because there's uncertainty in the actuality of form as an individual. Let us just say that you are a life process, you are living, and as you're living, you are a moment of existence, and this moment of existence, based on what it's aware of within its moment, is moving and becoming its next decision. What that means is mankind could be a spotlight in which it's as if like I'm holding a flashlight on, the floor and trying to see what's on the floor, and this light can touch any projection and simulation of reality and relationship and form, but it is still not it. As if that moment when you saw the Vedic seers said to be in the world and not of it, it was as if that moment where you suddenly realized that the flashlight, in other words, the light, the awareness that you have, is a profundity of intelligence that never can know itself because it never needs to. Because we are the ones who are creating need. It's the human idea that needs possibility. But the existential experience, there's always an impossibility. It's beyond the spectrum. And when there's an intelligence beyond the spectrum, that's pretty much someone telling you, stop reading a book and on skydiving and just go skydive. Just go see the experience. Go learn from it directly from the experience. Respect the experience of your moment. For if you think about it, of how perhaps there's the concept of Hagakure, the samurai must have been existentially aware to the moment. That means he is taking himself consciously rather than unconsciously being whirled out of this reality. And so that was, to be honest, the warrior's honor, that he stood for something greater, for he was part of that greatness. And it becomes an existential reunion for a man who fights for life and then realized he was always fighting for himself. And so it's as if you close down the simulation gently and you carry on with your experience. So let us say that the last glance of the samurai before he transitioned himself, and of course guys, this is culturally significant to the samurai. That behavior is not required now at all in any way, unless you're trying to maintain that tradition as a samurai student. That reality must be preserved and properly, and not to be duplicated ignorantly. Again, so we see the last glance of the samurai suddenly being that moment where he's like, I have practiced, I have carried on discipline, I have made my name, I have been in wars, I have killed, and I have seen my brothers be killed. Now the moment has come, and I am aware. It's as if that moment where you are like, regardless of how I am leaving and transitioning from this reality, from this life, I am aware that of what is here, and because I am not that, I am the transition. You see? Multidimensionality must become something where it is in your realness, not in someone else's realness. What that means is it doesn't matter how much someone says, oh, that's the greatest artwork, you need to go see it. It could be, you know, not the greatest artwork, you know, it could just be like the guy's what he's seeing for the first time. We must not be ignorant, because man right now is experiencing space and time. And it's just that we just can't get an answer to that question, so let's not make any rash decisions. What that means is when you see yourself using concept to tell someone how life is, be aware that you are doing that, because you will get lost in how you communicate to sometimes. What that means is, for example, any advanced communicator must be aware that the communication is not him. That nothing is him, and the judgment cannot be done. There can be no judgment thing, because there's infinite judgment in every single aspect of this existence. There's infinite change, infinite transition. As if when they came to say you were guilty, you're like, what about the rest of the ideas which could be just like me? And you will see guilt was a man-made construct, because man knew that he needed to correct himself, but was lacking vision. Give yourself vision, and what that means is be curious about it. You know, go see how your environment's looking. Go see how the modern man is looking. Go see how ancient men used to look at the world, you know. We must utilize our history not in obsessing about what is truth, but to realizing that that is imagery to work with. Truth is unknown when you have an unknown aspect to your experience. That moment where you don't know, you just don't know. So truth cannot be more than that. It is when you become silent and still, and you learn from the pond, in that when the ripples are gone and there's no need for anything to be thrown, you will see that the limitless sky and the hills and the stars and the cosmos is reflected in the stillness and silence of that pond. Nature is our poetry, because it is within us. Simple as that. Because regardless of how much someone talks about eternity and infinity, it is something which you must actualize into your experience. What that means is, if I'm sitting on the park and I'm hungry and I think about food, and let's say I think about wherever I'm going to go eat or whatever, you know, I see that that idea has not been actualized yet, but I have it there. I mean, I'm experiencing myself having the possibility of going, you know, you could even be like that in anywhere. It's like, where is the party? And you begin to envision this reality. Do you see? So let us say it like this. You become curious about how you're located in the space and time, and you realize that you, as a moment of existence, as a self-aware being, are existentially responsible to be aware of how you're communicating and allowing, how you're handling and allowing the communication to happen in your moment. Let us say. And to not get confused, simply you're a being, you're here, you're standing, you're in a moment, and you're just aware of what's in that moment. And simply said, there's nothing needed to hold on to that is not transitioning infinitely in the depth of your vision. Because the depth of an individual idea's vision is its collective being. And that's when the modern man recognizes the platform he's on and the performance that needs to be done. So if I think what me as an individual person want to do, I might not want to do anything. But if I think about what the human species needs to do right now, what these life forms need to do, and I would say I would always have energy because it would be contributing to a greater vision. Because man is a temporal being, in other words, you have certain, let's say, your energy fluctuates, your existential energy and the energy of manifestation fluctuates. Let's say like throughout the day you have a certain amount of time to do something, and then you got to sleep, and then the next day you got to do something. So if you begin aligning your life's work with what you feel you want to give as your greatest contribution, what you want to contribute to most. It could be something, you could be a musician, it could be in bringing out the next greatest compositions, you could be a DJ, you could be a mystic in the Himalayas, understanding new aspects of the human experience, you know? You can be that astronaut that's like, oh my God, I wish I could take a selfie, you know? You see? There are many moments in which imagery blends and we are found peacefully present without a need to be something or to do something. When this happens, your gentleness is your guide. So to be honest, you never needed some kind of cure or remedy or some kind of, substance to take and suddenly go to another realm. You needed to seek your truth, and in that realizing the truth was seeking you, because there is absolute being at the end of it. What that means is there have been many great men, but the greatest man knew that man was never here. But his existential experience, which was unspeakable and undefinable, was. There is something within you right now that is profoundly living. Be aware of this, and it is guiding you not by ideology. Because man's mind is at first, based on our educational systems and media, being conditioned to work as an idea having to maintain this life force. This life force does not need an idea to maintain it. This life force needs an allowance for all ideas to be manifest with the awareness of the present moment. So you walk and you're not carrying luggage in regards to theorems and theories and scriptures and whatnot. You are aware that wherever you are as a moment of being, your experience is gentle and it is present. There are some wars that you cannot escape from unless you stay there till the end. What that means is a lot of spiritual folks, let's say, find themselves that spirituality is the acceptance and the opening of the word, and the word alone is standing there as a pillar of suggesting transcendental wisdom. But at the same time, when man finds a teaching that is suggesting his experience is beyond who he knows and beyond the individuality that he is, and that teaching is self-activated, so you got to go sit down and just go into your moment of harmony and just find your greatest vision to work with, and see that it's always been working through you as a natural phenomenon, you see that the intentions of mankind are never just for mankind. Because if the environment of mankind dies, mankind will always feel it is dying too. So to be honest, mankind so far has not lived properly yet. People are buying mansions, but that is not the wealthiest way, and let's say the most abundant way to live as a human being. The most abundant way to live as a human being is actually not needing too much physical fluctuation, but being a wind of a current, being a wind of happening. So that you are constantly learning and studying your moment of being, and the illusions cannot remain. You're conscious. And when I say you are conscious, it's because that consciousness moves from the association of an idea in a room to the association of the room of the idea, and then an association of the room beyond the room. This is simply how, let us say this is a pattern in human thinking in regards to mystical views of where conception is originating from. Because man either takes responsibility for his conception or he doesn't. You either sit down and be like, okay, I am the originator of my experience, or you're like, it's something else's. And you need to see, when you accept, it doesn't mean you're going to always have. What that means is when you accept, let's say, the responsibility of being a great athlete, and let's say the club's hired you or something, you begin to see that it's one of those moments where you have to deliver by creating. A lot of problems are just lacking creative ability of the being who's aware in the moment. Creativity meant you cannot just create something, you could not just draw with a paintbrush on a canvas. You could be aware how your whole world could conceptually change, and you can, in a subtle manner, be aware of it while walking in the park, and to see that man was never his ideas. Ideas cannot explain man, the intelligence of man. It is transcendental. So when the intelligence is transcendental, gosh, it seems like our culture and humanity has been just developing something for an idea, you know? You know, I'm pretty sure there have been visionaries in the past where they were living in here and they were just looking at life and they were like, why is this flowing in ways where hate is manifesting? Like, what is really wrong with the human being? And then you begin to see the interpretation of hate. You having a concept of hate is what is wrong with the human being. Because you suddenly begin to see that you are associating with that imagery, and that imagery, it's as if you're carrying it to your next moment because you're still associating with it. And I am talking about this in a way, on some level you can consciously handle this, but guys, on another level, the best handling is to trust your life. Trust that which is you in this universe. and they share the same you. As you recognize that the dreamer was never asleep, the end of the reality of the dream is the wakefulness. So there's that moment between a dream and that moment before you're awake where they are integrated and they are one. So it's as if there's no distinction, there's no differentiation, you know? It's as if on one level you're walking, you're walking along the park and somebody comes and tells you, hey man, you're just this individual human being that's more objective, and you think you have a mind and you think you're eternal, but you actually know you're an object, man, sorry. There's one person, okay, and you're continuously, okay, I'm an object, all right, let's see. And you're continuously walking, you're constantly walking, in this park. And then suddenly someone comes up, man, and says, hey man, you are don't you know, bro, you're actually an eternal being. You're not an object, you are the fascination between, and you're like, oh, wow, that's crazy, And you walk, and then suddenly you see, there's at the same time, after both these communications, I'm going to do a third communication that is saying, hey man, what if there was no one here and life is a mirror? you will begin to see that it doesn't mean that life is a mirror. It just means that there's a quality in how you are interpreting your environment and how you are judging things that is based on the beginning axioms and ideas and memes which you are, in a sense, moving through. So what that means, if Bob had a certain personality, where all those personalities came from and where all these impressions and imagery came from would be the origin of what your intelligence is. So what that means is when you see the book of a writer and you're like, oh, this book's pretty nice, that book is just one aspect of that writer's reality. That writer is a human being and he's going through many experiences of himself and just communicating what needs to be. It's very important also to recognize that because there are going to be very new multidimensional renaissances happening in the creative expression of man in regards to self-awareness and just what initiates through those moments of self-awareness, you will begin to see that what is happening is right now, Mr.Within is in a sense introducing that the old culture, we are not getting rid of it, we're not judging it, we're not saying our past made mistakes. Our ancestors is every decision made by every human being in the past, and so I'm fine with that. But we're gonna put it on pause and we're not gonna take too many ideas from the past, and we're going to create one student mind that begins to observe and look at humanity and see it from a clarity that has no judgment. So if you really want no judgment in this world, if you really don't want to have distinction and separation, embrace life as yourself. And just watch what happens to your experience when you sincerely and compassionately trust the flow of your awareness, of your being, of your life. As silence is very respectfully given by old ideas and our old cultures and anything that sprouted something that man does not serve man in this current generation. Respectfully, the past will be silent and the future never spoke, maybe only to some, but the future is always also silently observing, and so the past is also silently observing. When this happens, man is found in a space where everything is present. So every thought you have, every consideration you have, every word entering your ear from this voice is all an awareness you have to something that is happening in the present moment. When you become aware of this, you realize that the humanity, just like he goes to training in the gym, needs to develop pillars of self-awareness constantly as he's moving throughout this life. In other words, you must build authentic moments with creation, and there you shall be creator. The intelligence was never distinct. The states of consciousness of human beings are increasing naturally. To be honest, there's no reason for anyone to be in what many people think is the end of the world. It's actually not the end of the world. It was the end of the world of some people. And after those people have passed away, you begin to see that we are carrying the torch of what reality could mean to those who perceive us. So don't think of yourself too much as someone who is doing an individual task, such as a writer or a speaker or an artist or you know, an entrepreneur, whatever. You know, it's simply you being aware that your presence is your voice from the minute you originated in this reality. There isn't much to say, and just be yourself. That means trust your existential inspiration. So when you go in front of that stage of a world that will never understand you, and you begin to speak, if things get shaky, just begin dancing. That's pretty much the only strategy I think there is. Dance. Just begin dancing, you know? And so in our greater observance and the allowance that we have gotten to very clearly look at the present moment, knowledge will come into man in the way he will communicate it. So we need to realize what is very significant for our children's children, and how if we were to visualize civilization 7,000 years from now, we would begin to see that it would be very important It would be very important for us to give a proper communication of what we are. So you thought you only needed to be yourself, which was had a mystical quality to it too, for only your confidence or whatever whenever someone said that. But actually you need to be yourself for the generations to come. You need to be the most clearest, honest, sincere expression, and it doesn't matter what system you're in. The system is doing its own thing, and you are doing your own thing. And you are simply here, and as you are here, your existence is the systematic whole, not the conceptions of the illusory and temporal realities that an aspect of omniscience individualizes into. So what that means is, when you find that rishi or that shaman or that sage or that being who realized his nature of being, you would see it would be as if once you understood it too, there was a silence in which the agreement was always there. So I may not know you, but we have always agreed in our silence. And that is why we walk in silence. And so once you really understand the value of your solitude, you will see it is voices and sounds are a blessing. Once you confront the beauty in the silence of being, just the silence of this existence, you begin to see that every noise, based on your awareness to how it's being formed in your moment, is becoming clear. And your trust in life makes it exciting. So what that means is all the individual idea and the ego ever needs is just constant excitement, but you need to take an existential responsibility as the creator of the world for this ego. So this ego is not just standing anywhere, it's standing in the awareness that is observing it. So take responsibility as an existential observer and see that you have done everything before you ever needed to. And so space and time are what is projected into shape. They are shapeless in their origin, for man's origin is unknown, it seems. And so perhaps a heavenly gaze was a heavenly state of being where there could be no perception of hell, but also not an ignorance of the reality. So what that means is, if you are someone who's done something, and I'm pretty sure everyone who's succeeded in anything ever realized this, that at first when you try the thing, you don't know it, and because you don't know it, it's like you gotta constantly go into it. And so you are a fool for, let's say, for the whole time that you're practicing until that moment where the practice is actualized in your experience. Ask yourself, how am I feeling about reality? And as you ask how about feeling, without going to ideas first, you'll see you'll get some feeling, something will happen to you. And then, when you feel that, begin to see there never needed to be a judgment. And work was an interpretation that came as judgment. The acceleration to a higher state of consciousness for man now is to trust the intelligence of this world and realize that he is not just co-creating with his friend in the coffee shop, he is co-creating with everything that is existent in one's present awareness. Culture, I have noticed in society, it's like a being. It's something that's developed and there's been various contributions, and this being is suggesting a preference. So when you look at many cultural ideas in our mainstream, you're like, these ideas are like suggesting. It's as if culture is like this being that's saying, hey, this is how it's going to look out. This is how it is. This is how it is. This is how it is. You know? And so of course we see the influence of media here. But as one begins to perceive that manifestation is not rooted in individuality. So once you begin to see that individuality was like the leaf on the branch, but you have greater roots, you need to recognize that you will not externally see the aspects which you actually are and which are generating the projection of your experience here. It seems in a world where the noise could not figure it out, the silence knew. It seems that in a world where a body was moving to find out where it is, it couldn't figure it out until it was still. Ask yourself, what the self is. And as a wind comes in you exploring reality more deeply, go in nature, be very still, be very silent. And this silence and stillness is not one that's trying to act. This silence and stillness is you literally just being like, all right, I need some space from the external. I just need a space from this whole reality, this world, this my job and everything I'm doing, you know? Go into a moment of silence and stillness where your phone could be off in a way where it was as if it was never made. And sit down and be present and observe what is here. As you do, the rest is always known. Much blessings and namaste.